Englisch spricht, werde ich auch die ganze Sendung hindurch mit ihm Englisch sprechen und ihn interviewen und ihn bitten, uns ein paar Dinge zu sagen aus seiner eigenen Sicht und seiner eigenen Erfahrung über die vedische Kultur. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Tonight we have a guest here in a private home. As you can see, we're not in the studio as usual. And our guest today is a holy man from India. His name is Narayan Maharaj, Bhaktivedanta Narayan Maharaj. And he's what is called a sannyasi. That is a man who is in the renounced order of life. In India, in the classical caste system, there are 4 different classes of society: the workers, and the second class, the businessmen and entrepreneurs; the third class, the kshatriyas, they are the governors and the rulers; and on top of society is a small group of brahmanas, who is supposed to guide society and to give counsel and religious guidance to the members of society. So the members of the Brahmin caste, they go through different stages of life. In the beginning of their life, they are what is called brahmacharis. That means to the age of 25, they will live a celibate life in the so-called Gurukul, which is a school of the guru, of a spiritual teacher who will give them training in spiritual life. And after this brahmachari life that goes up to the age of 25, they will have what is called in Sanskrit grihastha life. Grihastha life means the life of a householder, of a married person, and that usually for a brahmana who is following this system goes up to the age of 50, maybe more. And after this stage of life, after he has finished his married life, after he has left his family and his children had grown up, he will enter into another stage of life that is called vanaprastha. This stage means the stage of a person who's dwelling in the forest. That is literally the translation of the Sanskrit word vanaprastha. And in this stage of life, he tries to become more renounced and detached from the material life. And at the end of his life, at the age of about 70 or 75, he will take sannyas. That means the renounced order of life. That means something like a traveling preacher. So our guest tonight is in this renounced order of life. He's a sannyasi, but he has been a sannyasi since a longer period of time because he or his spiritual master felt that he was qualified to become a renounced member of society at an earlier stage of life. So we have just introduced a few Sanskrit terms and said a few things about the Indian classical system of society. And we would like to go on with our explanation about the Vedas in general. The Vedic scriptures are the ancient scriptures of India. They are written in the Sanskrit language, and they are basically giving us information about different sciences, but in particular about the spiritual science. So we are most concerned this evening with the spiritual science. And for this purpose, we have invited our guest to speak to us tonight and answer a few questions on spiritual life. Now, Your Holiness, would you please introduce yourself briefly and tell us what has brought you to the West?
I have come from India. Especially, I was born in high class of Brahmin family. And in the age of 26, I left my father, mother, and wife, and everything, and surrendered into lotus of feet of my Gurudev. Nitya Leela Pravishtam Vishnu Pahasishmat Bhakti Pragyan Keshav Swami Maharaj, who was the very dear most disciple of Jagat Guru Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Thakur Prabhupada, who sent his mission to whole world to preach Vedic culture and knowledge everywhere. So he's one of the dearest disciple, Srila Bhakti Vedanta Swami Maharaj, who is now known in Western country as Prabhupada. He was my friend. Also, he was god brother of my Gurudev. And he took sannyas, renounced order, from my Gurudev. And then he came to Western countries to preach the same Vedic culture and knowledge to whole world, that they should be happy. He also requested me to come in Western countries. My Gurudev also wanted. That is why I have come from India to preach the same Vedic culture and knowledge, especially based on Srimad Bhagavatam and Gita, and in the guidance of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who spread Harinam Sankirtan all over world. So I'm making tours of whole world, like Western countries, England, America, France, Germany, Italy, and also in America, all the parts of America, in East Coast, West Coast, Costa Rica, Brazil, Venezuela, and also Canada, in Australia, Indonesia, Malaysia, and Singapore, and all other places I have to. This is my 7th tour in world. Everywhere all used to be inspired by message of Indian culture and knowledge. Through name Sankirtan, by the name of Supreme Personality of Godhead. We know that, you should know that, in whole world, Vedas are the oldest books. These books, though we call book, but it is transcendental knowledge given by Supreme Personality of Krishna himself. Vedas are divided into 4: Rig Veda, Sam Veda, Yajur Veda, Atharva Veda. But actually, they were one, and from one, it has been divided in 4 by subjects. But though there are so many parts of Vedas, but actually they are divided into 2. One, how we can do sacrifices, fire sacrifices, to fulfill our desires that we can be happy in this world. And secondly, knowledge, Vedic knowledge, that we are not this physical material body. We are part and parcel of Supreme God of Godhead, Krishna. And from the time we forget Supreme Personality of Godhead, that we are part and parcel and eternal servant of Krishna, Godhead. Illusory Maya came and she covered over this soul. And then now we are thinking that we are this body. We have forgotten what is soul, what is transcendental knowledge, and why we have come here and suffering a lot in the endless chain of birth and death, suffering and sorrow. Not this is first time, but in lakhs and lakhs kinds of species of life we are going on.
So you mean we have gone through many different types of bodies,
Yes.
thousands and thousands
Yes,
types of
thousands
bodies.
and thousands and lakhs. And then we have come to this.
And now we
It
have
may
come
be
to
that
human
before
form.
this we were human shape. Again we went in animal shapes, in trees shapes, in insect shape. Sometimes we were in heavenly planet like goddesses, sometimes here and there. And we are thus from beginning lakhs and lakhs years before, we are going in endless chain of birth, death, sorrows and suffering.
Mm.
But if by luck and fortune, if you will have a realized soul, then in their association, we can know that we are eternal servant of Krishna, Supreme Personality of Godhead. We are not this physical body. As from a baby, we grown up in young age, and then old days. Thus, after old days, we can give up this body, and again we can come in other forms. Like we can come if at the time of death we are thinking of a lady form, we can be lady. If you are thinking of any animal, you can be animal in animal shape. According to your impressions that and you have done what you have done, and in the last, according to the remembrance of the last birth and death time, you will have to take the same form. And thus, being in the trap of this Maya, always birth, death, sorrow, and suffering. So, knowing these things, that if you will remember Supreme Personality of Godhead, chanting and remembering His names and His pastimes, you can remember and you can realize that I am eternal servant of Krishna, not this body. In Vedas, and the explanation of Veda are Purans, and in Puran, Srimad Bhagavata is prominent.
We should say to our audience that Puranas is one division of the Vedic scriptures, and they deal mostly with transcendental knowledge.
We think that Vedas are more older than Vedas. That is, its name is Puran. Puran means old. And same thing, it has been Puran, all Purans and Srimad Bhagavatams are called Pancham Ved, fifth Ved. So not different from Vedas. Only they are in some easy language that general person can realize what are Vedas. So without the knowledge of Purans, we cannot know what are Vedas and what is the aim and object and teachings of the Veda. So Vyasadeva has manifested it to very easily know the aim and objects and teachings of Vedas. So everywhere in Vedas also, in Ved also, it has been written by so many so many Upanishad, that there was a Nachitika Isha Upanishad.
What are Upanishads?
Upanishads are the essence of all Vedas. Essence and the collections of the teachings and the knowledge of Veda. Upanishad means the knowledge which is very deep. It has been told in Upanishads, and it is also called Vedanta. Upanishads.
The end of the Vedas.
The end of Vedas.
Conclusion.
The conclusion of Vedas. This. So in this, it has been told by so many like stories, but not a story, upakhyan, that we are eternal. Nityo nityanam chetanaschetanam. We are eternal. And we have come from eternal. And that is God Himself, Krishna Himself. But we have now forgot Him. And that is why we are suffering from all these things. If we will go through a process, that process is that anyone, any devotee who is so much qualified, he is realized of his soul and Krishna both. And if you will serve him, and by serving you can question some in a good way with shraddha, with honor, and with service, then they will be pleased and they can give this transcendental knowledge of Vedas. Then you can realize very easily. As Nachiketa received this knowledge from Brahma himself.
So, who is Brahma?
Brahma means this creator of this world in the guidance of Supreme Personality of Godhead.
So, in the Vedas, it is explained that Krishna is the supreme form, the Lord, according to the Vaishnava teachings.
Not only Vaishnavas.
Also, the Vedas in general.
Like it has been told, Vishnu, Paramam Padam, Om Tad Vishnum, Paramam Padam, Sada Pashyanti Surya Devi Chakchuratata. Those have realized what is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. They will see. Pashyanti means see. They will see, not only realize in heart.
So
they will see.
To explain to the audience, Maharaj or His Holiness is explaining one verse from the Rig Veda, which is considered to be one of the 4 original Vedic books. And in this verse, it is stated that the demigods, we have heard that in the so-called Hindu religion, there are many gods. But actually, among these gods, there is a supreme God. And in this Rig Veda verse, it is explained that the demigods, they're always looking to the highest abode of Vishnu. So Vishnu is understood to be the highest Lord.
In Vedas, everywhere, it is written that there is no two gods, or so many gods. Only one God, and that is Vishnu. And this Vishnu is Shyam. Shyamat Sabalam Prapadde, Sabalat Syamam Prapadde. That is Krishna, which has been explained in Srimad Bhagavat Puran. Puran is same like Pancham Ved. So both are one. So Krishna is Supreme Personality of Godhead. He has so many manifestations like Ram, Nisingha, Kalki, Aman. They are one with Krishna. There are no any other things than Krishna.
Excuse me. What His Holiness is explaining here is that the Supreme Lord is appearing at different times in different incarnations on this planet or in this universe in order to deliver people from their suffering in this material world. And he explains also that the Vedas are basically not only the four Vedas that we have mentioned, the Rig Veda, Atharva Veda, Yajur Veda, and Sama Veda, but that the Puranas, this ancient knowledge of the scriptures which are called Purana, are also Vedic. There's a misunderstanding in the Western world sometimes that there are only four original Vedas. But His Holiness, who is a Vaishnava, who is a worshipper of Vishnu and who comes from the
Vedas.
Bhakti tradition,
Vedas
he has read all the Vedas. He knows Sanskrit. He knows also Bengali, which is Hindi, which is a language. Bengali is a language in which so-called modern Vedic scriptures have been written 500 years ago, for instance. There has been an incarnation of God on this planet, and he has preached in the Bengali language, and some books are talking about this incarnation of God. So to us in the Western world, it may appear very hard to believe that there is some God actually appearing on this earth, or that God himself is actually appearing in an incarnation. In the European Judeo-Christian tradition, we have grown up with the understanding that God has once created the earth, and then he more or less has stepped aside and allowed the human beings or the living entities to do what they are doing. And once he has sent his son, Jesus Christ, and then many Christians now are waiting for doomsday or for the day of judgment, where everybody will be judged according to his sins or according to his good deeds. And for instance, the Catholic Church, which is in Europe still the strongest church, has a dogma that after our life, or at the end of the world, there will be judgment day, and people will go either eternally to hell or eternally to heaven. So in the Vedas, these things are explained differently. The concept of reincarnation, or the concept of cycles of birth and death, as His Holiness has explained, that we are going through according to our deeds, according to our thoughts, especially our thoughts at the end of our life. These deeds and our thoughts, our mental activities and our physical activities, in other words, are actually taking us to our next destination, to our next body. So the Vedas also speak of hell. The Bhagavata Purana, one of the scriptures, actually speaks of different hells, Patala Loka, Rasatala, different hells, but it is not stated that one is staying there eternally. So a sinful person, he will go to hell according to Vedic understanding, but this person will also at some point in time be relieved of his sins, and he will have the chance to start again, maybe in lower forms of life, to come up to the human form of life. So the Vedas are actually explaining that the human form of life is most valuable because it gives one the chance to actually be trained in transcendental knowledge and to go back to the kingdom of God. And as His Holiness has explained, there is a guidance on this path, and this guidance is actually the spiritual master. In the beginning, His Holiness, when he introduced himself, he has also mentioned his own spiritual master. What was his name?
Nitya Leela Pravishtam Vishnu Pasisham Bhakti Pragyan Keshav Goswami Maharaj.
Yes, I would like to call him Keshava Maharaj for our brief purpose here. And so his own spiritual teacher, what is called the Guru, we have often heard this term Guru. This Guru is actually the spiritual teacher who is guiding us on a path back to Godhead. So we can say that the Vedas, in particularly books like the Bhagavad Gita and the Puranas, who are revealing the knowledge of God directly, are giving us the guidance how to go back to Godhead. And the Guru, the spiritual teacher, is the person who gives us an example. He's the self-realized soul, as His Holiness has stated and explained. And this self-realized soul is helping the living entities to understand the Vedic knowledge. So we can see also that in our schools, there are books for mathematics, there are books for physics, books for chemistry, but still we have a teacher because we need some person who knows this subject matter, who is advanced in this field, who has already a degree, a PhD maybe, and he's teaching us. So we are not just studying from books, but we also have a teacher. So that is the purpose of the guru also. We have the Vedic books, we have the knowledge in the books, but we need the example of a self-realized soul who actually is a person who has understood the absolute truth. Now, the absolute truth, according to the Vedas, is the understanding that we are eternal spirit soul. As His Holiness has explained, we are part and parcel of the Supreme. He has quoted one verse from the Upanishads that states, Nityanas Nityananam Chetanas Chetananam Eko Bahunam Yo Vidadati Kaman. So in this verse, when we translate it to the to the English language, states that among all the eternal living entities, Nityanam means eternal, among all the conscious living entities, there's one supreme entity that fulfills the desires of all the others. So this entity is actually God. So sometimes we may wonder, we desire something or we have a wish, and it will be fulfilled in some way. So the person who actually fulfills our desires directly or indirectly is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, according to the Upanishads and according to Vedic scriptures in general. Now, I mentioned a little difference between the Christian tradition or Judeo-Christian tradition and the Vedas earlier. And I want to explain further that in the Christian tradition, there is the concept that Jesus has come to save us and to reveal us.
Tell something.
Yes, His Holiness would like to say something in regard to this, I think.
I want to explain this, that someone thinks that in Vedas or in Hinduism, there are so many gods and goddesses, but it is not true. Supreme Personality of God is one without second, but He has some transcendental shape and so many powers. By His so many powers, He can create this world. He can nourish and support this world. He can come in so many forms. He can create lakhs and lakhs, so many jivas.
Excuse me. The word lakhs means thousands and thousands.
Thousand and thousand souls.
Souls.
And lakh is thousand and thousand of this material world also. But He is one. Like moon is one. But we see first moon, second moon, third moon, fourth moon, fifth moon, like. And we can see in 16 kalas in Chandra. Different days. Sometimes increasing and sometimes decreasing. But moon is one. Only by this shadow of earth, sometimes these kalas are increasing and sometimes decreasing, but moon is one. So Krishna is one. In Vedas or Bhagavatam, Puranam, everywhere it is like told that He is one. But for the benefit of the living entities, He descended to this world in various manifestations. So there are not different at all.